we now will invite Professor Yi Ki-ho, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Peace and Public Integrity, where he is also a Professor of Peace Studies at Hanshin University in South Korea, another context from which we need urgently to hear. So, Professor, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And just a minute, I needed to share my PPT. Okay, here it is. Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my PPT? Okay, thank you.
With your great title.
Well, I'm very honored to be a part of this Taiwan Ecumenical Forum. And from my perspective, how I would like to see about the new Cold War or neo-Cold War here. So I just made the title Return of Empires, because empire is not a new one, but how they came back as new empires. And instead of democracy, I'd like to focus about democracy. So I'd like to tell about these things, because the main reason why the neo-Cold War is a big problem and why it happened again, because I think that is very much about the crisis of democracy, and the crisis of democracy became a kind of democracy. And then what is the crisis of democracy here, and why crisis of democracy really a call back the new Cold War here? Simply saying, I'd like to emphasize about the increasing uncertainty, and I also found some psychology of fascism is growing up in each one's mindset, even in my mindset. Probably, I don't know, but so that is a big problem. And if I could remember again about the E.H. Carr, who was the UK diplomat and at the same time historian, he wrote a book, 20 Years of Crisis. 20 years means it's just after World War I, so 1919, and just before the World War II. So that is 20 years until 1939. But 20 years seem to be very peaceful. However, the peaceful 20 years was a period that every state would like to be very arrogant, and at the same time they were preparing the new war. So I don't know, we are living in just before another war. Anyhow, this crisis, if goes more deeper and more danger, then I think we can get closer to the war. And so that's what I would like to say here. That what is the problem? Actually, the problem comes from the failures of state. Every state nowadays pursue national interest. For example, the USA, even Biden says, make America great again. National interest is their top priority. Depending on the national interest, they forgot the virtue of a state and the common values and common senses, such kind of things. Even UK is also the same. For their national interest, they would like to be out of EU, and it is already happened. And Japan also would like to change their Article 9, so they would like to be a kind of strong state. And even China, absolutely, they would like to be a champion of great powers. So instead of G7 or G20, they would like to say G2. And DPRK, they also like to be a kind of strong state to develop nuclear weapons over here. So every state would like to be great power to pursue their national interest. But national interest, is it our humankind's value? That is a very basic and very important question to any president of the states in the world. Over here, so every country would like to be a champion. Every country would like to be an empire. And especially in East Asia, that's very, very hard competition to be a champion or to build up a new world order. So they would like to change the world order, which was dominated by the US initiative after World War II. So for example, China would like to change the San Francisco system in 1951 happened, and such kind of things. So, and over here, then what would be the drivers of empires? I'd like to say that is at least 4 elements: the military champion, military power, capital power, economic power, and cultural power and technological power. And every country would like to achieve such kind of elements. And the other important thing, to make it happen, they would like to make their platform. In other words, they would like to make their umbrella. And they would like to invite some small countries to be under their own umbrella. That's a neo-Cold War system. And over here, they use alliance and they use diplomacy. But alliance diplomacy has a big problem, because alliance diplomacy needs a kind of some enemy. So they have to define who is our enemy. And at the same time, such kind of alliance always makes us kind of a demonization, the recognition and process. And over here, then they always say that security first. And security makes actually military budget bigger, and that makes state insane. So I think state is, in some sense, nowadays insane, but state is also managed by people. So how we can train the people, I think there will be another hour, some task that we have to develop. And such kind of things actually make the Korean drama Squid Game on Netflix very, very popular. Because I don't know, you already watched the Squid Game or not, but anyhow, it is a kind of very inequality society, how they would like to survive. So it's a kind of survival game, but people very much agreed about the situation with their real life. So the democracy now, I think, okay. So the democracy has a lot of some problems, and over here, they do not actually represent all the people. So they made such a legal system only strengthen the power holders. So it's a kind of democratic system seems to be, in some sense, only their league. So democracy is necessary, but not enough. And at the same time, the democracy makes some legitimization of the government, but I think it is very limited. And thirdly, nowadays, the democracy mobilizes people. I would like to say that is kind of some fandom phenomena or some wrong populism. Because sometimes populism can be replaced by people to replace the democracy. So there are many debates, but I think over here, some wrong populism is also working to make democracy crazy. And over here, what happens is a division of mindset. I will show you how a division of mindset happens in Korea. But I guess such kind of division of mindset is not only Korean issues. It is an issues in China and in Taiwan and in France and everywhere. So actually deepening the gap is not only economic terms, but also it's a kind of some recognition and perspective as well. And such kind of division gave us uncertainty, more and more uncertainty and fear. So that makes a very unpredictable and very a kind of vortex. So that makes very unstable in this region. So what I would like to say is about 20th century democracy was good enough with this a gray zone only. For example, to make democracy happen, we need a kind of middle class. So we need a kind of economic development, and we need a kind of reconciliation, and human rights should be preserved, and democratic law is very necessary. In other words, to make democracy happen, especially in Asia, to break down the military dictatorship. But nowadays, I think it is not enough. The development also have to think about justice development and responsibility of the ecology and earth. And democratization also need a dialogue, fraternity, hospitality, diversity. It's not easy. And human right is, of course, important, but we also have to think about nature right, animal right, and earth right, maybe global right, and happiness right. And reconciliation is very basic, but it also needs peacekeeping, peace building, peacemaking as well. And over here, in gray zone is very similar to make a kind of a democratic state. But when I made a kind of this green zone, it's not only state in the local context. Later, I'd like to say about a state is not the only actor to insist their sovereignty. I guess the city sovereignty, local sovereignty itself is very, very important. And I think such kind of 20 years is the state is a kind of the invention of humankind in our development. But in 21st century, when we just found such kind of failures of state, then what kinds of a community we have to build up? So that's a kind of a starting point. And I don't think we have enough time, so I'd like to skip some PPT. And if we see here, this is a military spenders. Many people use this one, but if we could see 2017, USA was absolute number one, and the other ranking 2, 3, 4, so until 10. So actually ranking 9 countries, the total military expenditures of other 9 countries were less than the only single USA military spender in 2017. But if you see last year, USA is far more than. USA's one single USA military expenditure budget is almost equal to the other 14 or 13. And also one is interesting is about Chinese military expenditure, and Korean military expenditure is also increased a lot. So we could say the top 10, the defense budget countries over here, if we could see, number 1 is absolutely United States. However, number 2 is China. And Russia is number 4, Japan is number 9, and South Korea is number 10. And we also have DPRK as a nuclear weapon state. If we could see this kind of Northeast Asia is very much centered on military budget. In other words, they have the high potential of war in any time because they are already ready to such kind of physical wars. So how we can make it cool down? And if I also say about the mindset division, this is very symbolic picture when I used in my class. This was taken about 5 years ago. As I already mentioned, the parliamentary democracy is already almost dead. So people usually come to the streets in the plaza. So instead of a democratic institutional working, people would like to do directly. In some sense, it is good because people can say and gather together on the plaza, and we could say in some sense it's a direct democracy. Fortunately, the thing is that we do not have any physical conflicts when such kind of things happens. But what I like to say is that if you could see, Korea is very well known, notorious for our division, North Korea and South Korea, and we have a DMZ. It is demilitarized zone. However, less of the fires are centered just near the DMZ. So it's a very much high militarized zone in some sense. But if we could see inside of South Korea, 2016, just 5 years ago, this part, they have very strong belief that USA and South Korea should be a bloody brothers alliance system. So they use the American flag here and Israel flag here, and many of Christians belong to here as well. And the other side, this is a blue house. And here we would like to say the candle demonstration groups are gathered here. But their mindset is very different in many ways. Rather than alliance system, they would like to be more independent in diplomatically, and they would like to have some more good relationship with North Korea, etc. But they still have a very, how do I say, the anti-communism spirit is over here. So the policeman made a kind of the artificial DMZ here. You can see this is a police bus. So they made a DMZ here, not to make any physical conflict. This is a very symbolic picture that our mindset already is divided like that way. But I guess this is not only Korean case. Especially the G20 or OPEC countries, they have their problems in their side almost the same in many issues. The gender sensitivity issues about COVID-19 policy or some whatever.
If I could invite you to begin to wind your presentation down, Professor. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that my time is almost done. Yeah. Well, over here, the South Korean government would like to make a kind of the declaration of the end of war, but actually it's more than they would like to do something. But I don't know, this really can happen or not. I'm not optimistic over here because the real politics makes everything is very hard. So we are still living in the real two great power. Actually, China is the most and oldest empire in some sense, and USA is the most newest empire in long history. But now they are struggling together. So this is it. But I would like to skip. And only if I could say, USA has military bases in all over the world. Abroad, they have 400 bases. So actually, USA is the only country can fight the real battle. I mean, war, 365 days. So they are the champions like that way. On the contrary, China would like to make a kind of some Confucius, the institute, which has a lot of meanings in there. And many countries also like to be against such kind of a Chinese, the empire, domination. So they would like to make some different approach, but anyhow, the real purpose is almost the same. It's a kind of a build-up empire. So they would like to build up kind of their umbrella, which is initiated by US and which is initiated by China. And actually, the alliance diplomacy and neo-Cold War system force the other states to be on either side, in China or in USA. The former speaker already mentioned, it started from Five Eyes during the World War II, and then G7 and G20, and now they also like to, especially the USA, would like to build up AUKUS and Quad security dialogue. And over here, what happens over here? Well, I'd like to say in conclusion, so the real politics is actually the Cold War crisis is deepening. And state has more power and more opportunity, while other actors has less power, less opportunity in the name of security. So all other people or city or university or religions and Christians are always behind under the name of security. How we can overcome such kind of a security discourse? And second, Neo-Cold War always calls back state as the main absolute actors in international society. And third, Neo-Cold War divides the worlds in camp, I already mentioned, two sides, and military alliances are forced to belong. It's almost the same, and at the same time, military drills are increased in everywhere. Nowadays, Ukraine issues and the Belarus issues, and everywhere we could see such kind of thing happens. Then what kinds of scenarios? If I could say,
could you make your summary very brief? We really are very grateful, right. And but do need to.
Okay, this is the last one. Okay, well, if I'd like to say, we had better think about the city sovereignty, not only state sovereignty. So how we can make a kind of another solidarity, not alliance, among the Hong Kong, Taipei, and Okinawa, or Seoul, Tokyo, etc. So city could have some more powers to be connected together. And the other one, the cooperation among people, not by government people. So how we can really grow up kind of some global peace force in many ways. And we also have to invite, again, the spirit of Bandung in 1955, which gave us a lot of imagination over here. So the civil society solidarity initiative should be built, but I think it's not just words, but just actions. So I guess there would be a lot of things, but this kind of a Taiwan Ecumenical Forum can be a kind of a starting point as an anchor to build such kind of things. Thank you very much.